The first time Zarnix saw a needle, he recoiled so fast that his translator module short-circuited mid-screen. It happened in the student lounge of the Intergalactic Cultural Exchange Program's Earth campus, located just outside Phoenix, Arizona. The room was buzzing with the low hum of species-specific air regulators and the occasional clang of vending machines dispensing things that smelled like roasted rubber or burnt sugar, depending on the planetary origin. Zarnix, a student from the aquatic world of Trillanox, had been staring in mild horror at a live stream on the wall. It featured a tattoo artist hunched over a man's arm, needle in hand, injecting colored ink into skin with almost rhythmic precision. Is he being punished? Zarnix asked, his 3 fingers twitching involuntarily. No, said Owen Barlow, a third-year anthropology major and the only human student in the room at the time. He's getting a tattoo. Zarnix tilted his head, a gesture that meant confusion in his culture but looked oddly judgmental to others. That needle is penetrating his body. Repeatedly. Yeah, Owen said, chewing on a piece of gum like it was the most casual thing in the galaxy. It's art. Zarnix blinked slowly. That is not art. That is a biohazard. Owen chuckled but didn't bother explaining further. He knew from experience that trying to define human behavior to an alien species often led to more questions than answers. He turned his attention back to his sketchpad, where he was designing a geometric sleeve tattoo that extended from his shoulder to his wrist. He'd been planning it for months. Later that week, Zarnix requested to shadow Owen for a cultural immersion project. Owen figured it was harmless. He was scheduled for his first tattoo and thought, why not show an alien what humanity's about? The appointment was at a studio in downtown Phoenix called Steel Pedal. The exterior was covered in murals, some of which were moving animated spray paint powered by solar cells. Inside, the air smelled faintly of antiseptic and citrus. The walls were lined with portfolios, each filled with intricate designs ranging from dragons to microscopic depictions of the periodic table. Zarnix stood awkwardly by the entrance, his ocular ridges narrowing as a buzzing sound filled the room. That's the machine, Owen said, nodding toward the artist preparing his station. Zarnix's voice dropped to a whisper. It sounds like bone saws from Trillanox emergency rooms. The artist, a woman with a shaved head and arms covered in inked constellations, glanced at Zarnix. He okay? He's just new to this, Owen said, removing his jacket and revealing a bare shoulder. Zarnix watched, eyes wide and unblinking, as Owen sat down calmly. The artist cleaned the area, transferred the stencil, and fired up the machine. When the needle touched Owen's skin, Zarnix made a strangled, gurgling sound. You sure you don't want to wait outside? Owen asked through clenched teeth. Zarnix shook his head once. No, this is for science. The artist laughed. You're braver than most humans I know. Owen winced as the needle traced over his shoulder blade. A tattoo won't kill me. Are you certain? Zarnix asked. You are bleeding. It's surface level. It's part of the process. Zarnix lifted a small device and began scanning. Heart rate elevated. Skin temperature rising. Cortisol spiking. That's normal, Owen said, voice strained. It hurts, but it's not dangerous. Discomfort as an aesthetic choice is illogical. Yeah, well, humans aren't entirely logical. The session lasted 2 hours. By the time it ended, Owen's new tattoo glistened under a thin layer of ointment. Zarnix looked pale, or whatever the Trillanox equivalent of pale was, and slumped in a corner chair. That was a ritual of pain and ink, he said. And you paid for it. Yep, Owen said, pulling his shirt back on gently. Wouldn't be the same if it didn't hurt a little. The next day, Zarnix reported the experience in his cultural log. The entry was flagged by his professors for immediate review due to psychophysiological distress indicators. But Zarnix didn't want to quit. He wanted to understand. 2 weeks later, he followed Owen to a tattoo convention held in an enormous air-conditioned dome on the outskirts of the city. There were booths from artists all over the world, each displaying intricate artwork. Some had live demos. Some featured competitions. One area was called the Pain Gauntlet, where volunteers got spontaneous tattoos without knowing the design beforehand. Zarnix hovered behind Owen, taking meticulous notes and asking questions. Why do some humans get ink on their faces? Personal expression. And why do others get images of deceased family? Memorials. And this one. Zarnix pointed at a man with a barcode tattooed on his neck. That's either an artistic statement or a very committed grocery store employee, Owen said. Humans willingly alter their epidermis for abstract meaning, Zarnix muttered. Yep. It's kind of beautiful, don't you think? Zarnix was silent for a long time. I think. It is terrifying. Later that month, Owen got an infection not from the tattoo but from scratching it in his sleep. It became red, swollen, and painful. It's spreading, he said at urgent care. I didn't think it'd get this bad. The nurse took a look. You broke the skin barrier. That's always a risk. We'll start you on antibiotics. For the next 10 days, Owen couldn't lift his arm without feeling like it was wrapped in fire. Zarnix visited him daily, sometimes just sitting in silence. You said it wouldn't kill you, Zarnix finally said, on day 5. You are not dead, but you are. Dimmed. Owen chuckled weakly. Yeah, maybe I underestimated the healing part. You humans pursue danger for expression, like the fire dancers of Korthor during their death festivals. Sounds poetic. It is not. Many perish. Well, I'm not planning on dying. Just healing. Slowly. Zarnix didn't say anything, but he started bringing Owen vitamins and protein bars, citing various studies on accelerated dermal recovery. Owen didn't argue. By week 3, the infection had cleared, and the tattoo settled into its permanent form. A lattice of geometric lines, black and sharp against his skin, like a map of some alien architecture. It's done, Owen said, showing Zarnix. Zarnix studied it silently. You suffered for this. Yeah, but it's part of me now. I still do not understand. But I accept. Months passed. The story of Owen's tattoo spread through the exchange students. Some laughed. Some were horrified. One student from the sulfuric mines of Hal Darren fainted when Owen rolled up his sleeve. At the semester-end showcase, Zarnix presented his final project, a digital recreation of Owen's tattoo, rendered in rotating 3-dimensional projections with annotations in 6 languages. The title was Voluntary Harm as Symbolic Legacy, a Human Paradox. When Owen saw it, he said, You really paid attention. Zarnix nodded. I still find it irrational. But I admire the irrationality. As the showcase ended, Zarnix turned to him. Would you do it again? Owen paused. Yeah, I would. But maybe not on my shoulder this time. Zarnix tilted his head again. You humans are exhausting. Yeah, Owen said, grinning. We get that a lot. 3 days after the showcase, Owen found himself sitting cross-legged on a sun-bleached bench near the campus greenhouse, trying to finish a reading assignment on post-colonial symbolism in Martian settler poetry. The assignment was already late, and the Arizona heat wasn't helping. He had rolled up his sleeves, revealing the still healing tattoo. The scabbing had mostly cleared, but a few reddish patches lingered. He tapped at them absent-mindedly. From behind a cluster of heat-resistant succulents, a group of 6 Trillanox students slowly approached, their eyes fixed not on the book, but on the exposed ink. Zarnix was not with them. Instead, the one in front, slightly taller, with sapphire-toned dermal plates, stepped forward. You are Owen Barlow, she said, standing too close for comfort. Still am, he said, closing the book halfway. Unless there's been a bureaucratic mix-up. We are conducting a follow-up observational study. You are the primary data point. You guys ever heard of personal space? A second Trillanox, this one with a faint glow around its neck frills, answered without blinking. We adjusted for human spatial preferences. We are standing at the minimum non-aggressive distance. Right, Owen said, leaning back slightly. Well, what exactly are you observing? The first one narrowed her ocular membranes. We need to confirm ongoing biological integrity following your epidermal intervention. You mean the tattoo? Yes. Specifically, we're interested in your current pain index, immune response, and any behavioral deviations. Owen stared at them in disbelief. It's healed. Mostly. I'm fine. The third Trillanox, who had been silently recording with a small floating orb, leaned in. You are exhibiting tactile interaction with the affected region. Is the urge to scratch persistent? Only when 6 aquatic aliens stare at me like I'm about to explode. That's not a no. Owen stood up, brushing dirt from his jeans. Look, I appreciate the scientific curiosity, but I'm not a lab rat. A long pause followed. The group huddled together, whispering in a frequency just above human hearing. Owen could only make out the occasional word, keratin, regeneration, and something that sounded suspiciously like psychosomatic. Eventually, they turned back. The tall one spoke again. We request a controlled exposure scenario. Meaning, another tattoo. Under observation. Owen blinked. Absolutely not. It is for data consistency. There's a thing called informed consent, and I'm gonna go ahead and withdraw it. They didn't move. He sighed. You people ever heard of a bribe? We are unfamiliar with that term. Of course you are. He waved them off and walked toward the cafeteria, hoping proximity to food or oxygen would improve his mood. Inside, the air was thick with the smell of reheated noodles and something vaguely metallic from the interstellar cuisine counter. He grabbed a bottle of water and sat in the far corner, only to find Zarnix already waiting with a tray of colorful cubes. I heard about the greenhouse ambush, Zarnix said, not looking up. They're relentless. They believe your tissue response may contain unique adaptive markers. Yeah, well, my tissue response is tired. Zarnix slid a small container across the table. Topical anti-inflammatory. Human safe. I synthesized it to reduce residual irritation. Oh, and eyed it. You made this. I cross-referenced human dermatological studies with Trillanox wound care protocols. It should mitigate cellular irritation without impacting pigmentation. Owen unscrewed the cap and sniffed. It smelled like mint and phosphorus. I'm impressed. And a little concerned. The others want to replicate your experience. They are considering controlled dermal punctures. Owen coughed. They what? Not with ink. Just the puncture. To understand the sensation. That's not a great idea. I advised against it. Good. But they are persistent. I noticed. Zarnix leaned forward. They do not understand why you chose to endure pain voluntarily. It contradicts everything we are taught. Owen rubbed his temple. You think I got the tattoo just because I enjoy hurting? No. I think you did it to mark something. Owen looked at him. Yeah, I guess I did. What? He hesitated. It's for someone who's gone. Someone who mattered. Zarnix nodded slowly. We have rituals for death, but they do not involve skin alteration. It's not just about death. It's about remembering, carrying part of them with you. But it fades. Yeah, Owen said, but not all at once. They sat in silence for a moment, the hum of cafeteria noise around them. Then Zarnix tapped his tray. I've also been studying human nutrition. These cubes replicate the flavor profile of your cheesecake. Owen picked one up cautiously. Why does it shimmer? Bioluminescence. Harmless. He bit into it. It was oddly accurate, if a bit salty. You're getting better. I require a palate calibration partner. Not volunteering for that, either. Understood. Later that evening, Owen returned to his dorm. As he opened the door, a small package fell from the handle. It was labeled in awkward English, for your resilience. Inside was a sketch. His tattoo, drawn meticulously in ink, but altered slightly expanded outward with flowing lines that resembled Trillanox water patterns. There was no note, but he knew who it came from. He pinned it above his desk. 2 nights later, the university's biology lab issued a campus-wide notice. All unauthorized dermal experiments were suspended following an incident involving a Trillanox student and a grapefruit spoon. No injuries, but the spoon had to be surgically removed from the lab's synthetic dermal dummy. Owen read the notice aloud in the lounge. Zarnix didn't look up from his datapad. They tried to replicate pain using fruit utensils? They said needles were too intimidating. Of course they did. He leaned back, watching the stars flicker through the glass ceiling overhead. You know, Zarnix said, the others think you're unstable. Because I got a tattoo? Because you made a decision they can't model. I'm used to that. They worry it means humans are dangerous. Maybe we are. Are you? Owen considered. We're a lot of things. Depends which day you catch us on. Zarnix didn't respond right away. Then he reached into his satchel and pulled out a thin bracelet made of braided threads blue, black, and red. What's this? A Trillanox tradition. We wear these during long crossings, to remind us who we are when we're far from home. Owen turned it over in his hand. Thanks. It will fray eventually. That is part of the meaning. He tied it around his wrist, just above the tattoo. The next morning, the university announced a new elective, voluntary alteration and human cultural practice. The class filled within 3 hours. Only one human enrolled. Everyone knew who it was. The syllabus, co-authored by a bewildered sociology professor in Zarnix, began with a disclaimer. This course does not encourage bodily modification. It seeks to understand why humans do it anyway. It was a Sunday afternoon when Owen found himself back in the Intergalactic Cultural Exchange Commons, seated at the long table near the observation tank. The tank, originally designed for aquatic species to rest and rehydrate, had become something of a social hub mostly because the water glowed faintly and reacted to sound by pulsing in concentric waves. Zarnix was submerged up to his neck, humming tuneless notes that made the water flicker like a heartbeat. "Don't take this the wrong way," Owen said, peeling the corner off a protein bar, "but it's a little unsettling how your bath doubles as entertainment." "It is not a bath," Zarnix replied. "It is a regulated habitat chamber." "Sure, but you're humming in it like it's a spa. Vocal resonance accelerates cognitive recalibration." "Right. You're meditating in a glow pool." Across the room, 3 students from the gas-borne colonies of voluntary drifted near the ceiling vents, suspended in their grav harnesses. Their bodies resembled translucent jellyfish with elongated limbs trailing behind them, and they were watching Owen with the kind of focus usually reserved for dissecting unpredictable organisms. One of them lowered slowly, exhaling a puff of neon gas from the vents along its sides. The translator hanging around its midsection blinked before speaking. "You have scar pigment," it said. "It is still there." Owen glanced at his arm. "That's the idea. This permanence is inefficient. Why not remove it once the memory is stabilized?" "The memory isn't the only point," Owen said. "It's also about keeping something visible when everything else moves on." "Strange," said the voluntary, before floating back up to rejoin the others. They resumed their slow orbit near the ceiling, murmuring in tones that didn't require air to travel. Owen turned to Zarnix. "Are they going to keep doing that?" "They are trying to determine if your ink affects your social rank." Owen blinked. "What, like I'm a tribal chief now?" "Voluntary hierarchy is fluid. Physical markings suggest rights of status. They are unsure whether to reclassify you as a threat or an elder." "Maybe I'm both." Zarnix submerged himself briefly, then resurfaced. "They lack a category for paradox. Then they're definitely not ready for humans." An hour later, Owen found himself in the campus infirmary again, not because of the tattoo or the voluntary, but because of a persistent rash that had crept halfway up his forearm. It wasn't dramatic, just red and itchy, but it had resisted every cream and ointment he owned. Dr. Vell, the lead medical officer and a crustacean-like biped from the COAR system, tapped at her console with 3-jointed claws. Her voice came through a neck-mounted translator in clipped, clinical tones. "You applied the topical compound provided by your colleague." "For 2 days," Owen said, holding out his arm. "It helped at first, then made it worse." "Expected." The formulation lacked pH buffering. "Your dermal layer responded with localized inflammation. So I made myself allergic to alien aloe." "Not allergic, just incompatible." She scanned his arm with a handheld device that buzzed once and displayed a mapping of the irritation zones. "No infection. No systemic reaction. You require rest and barrier protection." "Barrier protection?" "A sleeve. You want me to wear a sock on my arm. Compression fabric, woven with inert fibers. It will reduce friction and deter scratching." She handed him a beige sleeve that looked like it had been designed for fashion-averse mannequins. "I'm gonna look like I lost a fight with a tube sock," Owen muttered, pulling it on. "It is function, not form." "Easy for you to say. Your species wears armor recreationally." She didn't respond, which Owen chose to interpret as agreement. By the time he left, the sun had started to dip behind the solar panels lining the west quad. He met Zarnix near the path that led to the central biodome. The alien was holding something wrapped in a cloth. "What's that?" Owen asked. "An apology," Zarnix said. "For the rash. You didn't make me try that stuff. I insisted you trust it." Owen raised an eyebrow. "Did this apology cost you anything?" "About 17 hours of lab time." "You really need a hobby." Zarnix unwrapped the cloth to reveal a small, handheld device shaped like a tuning fork with a pulsating core. "This is a resonance wand. It reduces itch signaling by disrupting nerve feedback." "You made a Sci-Fi back scratcher." "No, I refined medical technology. It is calibrated for human neuroreceptors." Owen took it and tested it on his arm. The itch faded within seconds. "That's disturbingly effective." Zarnix folded the cloth. "You may also use it recreationally. It produces calming vibrations." "I'll keep that in mind next time someone asks why I let a stranger jab me with a needle for 3 hours." They walked in silence for a bit, passing under a row of trees genetically modified to provide shade without shedding leaves. A group of students from the crystalline rings of Andarine were practicing some kind of interpretive movement nearby. Every time their limbs intersected, they made soft chimes. Zarnix eventually spoke. There's something I don't understand. Only one thing. You could have honored your memory with words, or kept it in your mind alone. Why make it physical? Owen thought for a moment. Because pain makes things real. It carves a moment into your body. And when it's there, it's yours. Nobody can take it. Zarnix was quiet. Then, we do not teach that. We teach that pain is noise, something to eliminate, not embrace. Maybe we're just louder species. I am beginning to suspect you are not a species. You are a contradiction wearing shoes. Owen laughed. That's the best compliment I've gotten all month. Later that week, Zarnix submitted a revision to his final cultural report. The title remained unchanged, but the conclusion was different. Where it had once read, "Human behavior under stress exhibits erratic, self-damaging tendencies," it now read, "Human resilience is not merely survival. It is ritualized defiance of impermanence." The review committee gave it a distinction and requested a translated copy for the Galactic Behavioral Archives. On his last evening, before returning to Trillanox, Zarnix met Owen one more time, near the edge of the biodome. Owen handed him a small envelope. "It's a print," he said, "of the tattoo. In case someone back home asks what humans do when they want to remember." Zarnix turned it over in his hands. "They will ask. Good. Tell them it didn't kill me." He watched Zarnix disappear into the transport hub, aquatic gear sloshing faintly with each step. Owen stood there a while, hand resting lightly on the sleeve covering his scarred skin, feeling the quiet vibration of the wand in his pocket. The rash had faded. The ink remained. And somewhere in the sky above, a star pulsed in time with the memory he'd chosen to make permanent.